Hello and welcome to the new vlog for Summerween. I'm in the exact same spot I was for the end of yesterday's vlog, but I wanted to just give you a little rundown of what we need to do this morning. The weekend kind of got away from me. I had some plans with one of my friends on Saturday, which was day 2, so I didn't end up reading as much as I wanted, and I didn't get to actually edit that vlog. So first things first this morning, I'm gonna have my coffee, which is somewhere back here, and I'm going to edit the previous week, the previous 2 days vlog. So I will not be able to start reading until after that, but the next section of what I'm currently reading, which is The Beast You Are by Paul Tremblay, is the title story. I'm gonna get to work on the other vlog in editing, and I will let you know how the reading goes once I start. I just finished it like less than 5 minutes ago, and I'm trying to process how I want to talk about this. First of all, the format itself was very similar to Beowulf in this like long prose, epic kind of tale, and actually in the end story notes about it, Paul Tremblay did mention that it was written in a way like Beowulf just because he wanted to, like why the heck not. Also, it reminded me of The Village a lot because there's this concept of like something is going on that not everyone is aware of, and like the adults know but not everybody knows, and it's kind of creepy in that respect. The part that I'm not saying I forgot about is that they're animals. They're not really people. They are anthropomorphized, so there's like cats and dogs and different types of birds, and there's like toads and frogs and like all these things. It almost felt like almost 1800s kind of society, and then as time goes on throughout the story, you are getting like more technology being introduced, which is really interesting. So it was like very much more of a direct, like same thing as like what's going on with humans, except on a much more accelerated path. Reading the follow-up notes, like this was not meant to be like a collection of stories written all at the same time. For the most part, he talks about where he pieced them all from, and they seem to be kind of like a smattering of almost random stories that fit together. The only overarching thing that I could find is that typically from one story to the next, there was either like a sentence structure or maybe like an item that carried over. For instance, in The Dead Thing, there is a shoebox, and it's like a box that they don't know what's in it. And then the story that followed that, they also mentioned a shoebox, which seemed really random. Clearly from like the day 1 and day 2 vlog and then this vlog, you're gonna see that I did enjoy it quite a lot. And after averaging everything out, because I did give this last story a 5 out of 5 stars, it did even out to about like 3.8, so I'm gonna give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Is it a perfect collection? No. I think that I almost would have preferred to have read these different things separately in the publications that they were. I don't know if that just means like maybe you should read it like a few stories a day, not quite as condensed as I read it, but I would still say, like, if you've enjoyed Paul Tremblay before, be it Paul Bear's Club or any of the ones that I usually like, I would still recommend reading this. It's a great day to be reading. That's all I have to say really right now, but I did start Everything the Darkness Eats. I don't know why I can never remember the name of this book. Probably because you can't physically see it for the most part. I started it like reading it physically, so there's like a few stickies in here, but I then switched over because I keep forgetting that I have an audio arc of it from Libro FM, and so I've been listening to the audiobook. I'm gonna probably eat and fold laundry and stuff while I listen to the audiobook. It is surprisingly a short audiobook, so I might be able to finish this today, which is really confusing. That's a very odd concept, like finishing a book in a day during a readathon. That never happens for me. So we're gonna see how far that goes. I have about 2 hours and 20 minutes left if I keep listening at the speed I'm listening to. But aside from that, it's a lot of random things that aren't relevant to you. The book itself seems like it might be a vampire book. I'm not I'm not 100% confirmed on that yet. I think I just realized who a character was that I didn't realize. So it starts out, I want to say in like the 90s, and they're at a dig. They find something, like a cave painting more or less, and something happens in which one of the characters seems to like change. I don't know if he was always like that or if the writing on the cave wall did that to him, like awakened something in him. And then it jumps to the present, and I just realized that that character's still here. Which isn't weird, but in the 90s they were saying that he looked very old, and so very interesting that he's still around. But there are a lot of characters being introduced, a lot of queer characters. I love that. I know this author is also queer, and so having them actually put a lot of awesome representation in here is great. A few other characters who I'm not sure are going to be returning to us, because Ghost is the only one that actually got like a second chapter. The first chapter where we see Ghost, this character is also dealing a lot with grief, having lost a partner. This character does also have a cane, and like, what was the other thing? I believe they have like a scar in their face and or have like some difference to their eye that was not there, I believe, before their partner passed. If you liked other books by this author, I think that you will like this one as well, at least from what I'm reading so far. It has some of the body horror, but it's not as compacted. I'm not one for flowery writing, but if the flowery writing is like in a disgusting way, I'm here. Let me see if I can find a beautiful, gross example. His little companion would circle his permanently bloodshot right eye, coiling in there and lazing like an earthworm in a bed of dirt. Oh, there's another character that was talked about, and they had like an aversion, like an intense aversion to blood. As many could scarcely forget the moment when the dear woman passed out at the annual July 4th picnic, simply because the innards of Mrs. Endicott's strawberry rhubarb pie resembled that of a human artery in full bloom. And I'm like, that's the kind of like flowery, maybe like decaying flowery writing that I really enjoy. I might just check in with you when I'm done this book, unless something weird happens. I mean, the whole book's gonna be weird, I'm sure, but what a lovely, disgusting place to be. It's just a good time. I finished it. I finished Everything the Darkness Eats, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And I've already filmed this clip earlier in the day. I wanted to kind of go back and revise some of the things I said. First of all, I'm gonna put all of the content trigger warnings up here on the screen. Some of these things were extremely graphic and detailed and pretty intense. There are 2 main plot lines going on in this book. There is this character that seems to be some sort of immortal creature, or I kind of was like getting vibes of vampire kind of things. It seems like hinted early on that this is linked to a bunch of missing women that have women that have gone missing recently. But the plot that I had a lot of problems with was about these 2 queer characters, Brett and Malik. Malik, I believe, is a detective of some sort. I believe he works for the police force and is helping investigate some aspect of the missing women. And you get not even his perspective in working on the case, but rather his home life with his husband, Brett. That is where the trigger warnings and content warnings for hate crimes, homophobia, rape, like graphic on-page rape, take place. I don't know. I'm having a hard time, because I did read through a lot of other people's reviews trying to see if maybe I was just being overly sensitive to these things. The clip that I am going to not include in this vlog was talking about trigger warnings for horror books, and the fact that like something such as romance has a lot of really good triggers and content warnings. That being said, I'm very sweaty obviously, so I'm sorry if I keep like wiping my face, but I did still give this book a 4 out of 5 stars, because I feel like my enjoyment of the book, if it were not for some of these very graphic scenes, was like a 5 out of 5. I'm gonna flip it back to Angel from the past to kind of tell you what my upcoming reading plans are going to be, because I'm definitely switching gears from here to try to get that out of my brain, because it just kind of put me in a dark place, and like not anything to be concerned about, but it was upsetting. It was very upsetting. Okay, Angel, take it over. So instead of reading Augustina Bastarrica's book 19 Claws and a Blackbird, I will maybe try to still read this at the end of the readathon. I'm gonna pick up a romance instead, because I need something that will be theoretically guaranteed to be lighter. It is still a horror book, kind of. It's Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This is about a character that moves into a house, I believe, and then, oh no, her neighbor moves in and she is convinced he's a serial killer, It's not long before she realizes that he might be something scarier, a genuinely nice guy who can pierce her armor to reach her vulnerable heart. It should still have some darker tones, I guess, in that respect, but it'll be lighter on me. So I do apologize if that was not what you were expecting. But we're at least gonna bring the mood up a little bit before we're able to move on to the other one. I literally just opened this, our lovely new read. And what is that? What is that in the author's note? This story contains some themes of grief, memories of a neglected, emotionally abusive childhood, and past suicidal ideation. While there are many true crime references throughout, there is no on-page violence or active killing in this book. That's it. That's the clip. I don't know why I always try to film here when it's like the worst lighting ever, and you're also gonna hear some weird tapping. But I wanted to update you really quickly on where I'm at, because I have read a little bit of a chunk into this. I am on chapter 6, so about 56 pages in. I was honestly kind of hoping that a library hold for the audiobook would come through, and it didn't. I wanted to finish this today, but I don't think I'll be able to finish that much book in a day. It is a work day today, but I don't have any other plans. I am going to be just reading in between things when I'm not busy and hopefully cranking through this book. I will say, so the concept is that the main character's father passed away like 6 months before the book, and she is having to move into the house temporarily so that she can go through and actually move things out, resell the house, which is not an uncommon trope for romance or horror books. The two vibes that I'm getting are the Grady Hendrix book and Happy Place, which is very weird because I'm not used to having those overlap. The interactions are just so awkward sometimes. Like the first interaction, she is moving back and it's like 2 or 3 in the morning and he is just there and he doesn't have any shoes on. And I think he might be shirtless, or maybe he's just like disheveled, and he's like, hey, can I help? And she's like, fuck off. Like, I think that's literally the first thing she says. It's really weird. The part that I wasn't expecting is that she's working on her dissertation because she is a PhD candidate. And so she is doing her dissertation on like true crime and the relationship between the victims and the people that are writing these books. Because a lot of times the people that are writing the books are maybe like the lawyer or the defendant or something. And so it's very biased, and she's writing about that bias and what we can take away from these books. And then there's also a really unexpectedly kind of sweet relationship with her brother. When they were younger, their parents divorced, and she, I think, is like 8 to 10 years older than him, and he stayed with the dad and she went with the mom, and like they were already kind of separated by the age difference, but now they were separated by living with different parents. So far I really like all the characters except our main character, which doesn't bode well for her, but I'm hoping that once we dive a little bit further in, she will have more of a personality aside from writing a dissertation, being grumpy and accusatory towards men, and yeah, those are her 2 traits right now, honestly. I am on page 166, chapter 14. Definitely made a significant jump in what I've read, and I'm gonna be honest, it's actually quite good. It has a blurb, and this might be why I'm thinking this, but Allie Hazelwood wrote, "The true crime is not reading this novel." But it does remind me a lot of Allie Hazelwood. I've read 2 or 3 by her at this point, and it has a similar vibe of like a strong female character that is like very clearly educated and like capable of being her own woman, or even just independent without a partner in general. Parts of her characters were also like very much she needs to overcome that independence to want a partner. Bento, can you stop with your nails? And that means that a lot of the interactions with Sam, her neighbor, are still... Oh, also, I don't know if I ever said it, the main character's name is Phoebe. That's weird if I never said her name. But Phoebe is like, she knows Sam now, and like she's been to his house a few times. He's been to her house, and they have kind of like a neighbor, like a slightly more than neighbor friendship. It's interesting because like it took quite a while for them to actually get to a point where they were talking and it finally like came to a head in which Phoebe was even like, you don't talk a lot, what's going on? So I'm glad that it was like that seal was broken, but like I'm halfway through the book. They haven't kissed, they haven't hugged, they haven't talked about much else aside from just like what's happening in the present. I also am doing tabs, which I keep remembering this TikTok I saw recently that was going on about like, why do romance readers put tabs in their books? Like, what are you tabbing all the times they kiss? I'm like, no, no, bitch. One of the things that I am tabbing is all the instances in which our main character, Phoebe, talks about herself negatively about being overweight. And not even always necessarily negatively. I knew I was fat, a word that didn't bother me as long as the other person using it wasn't doing so pejoratively. Sorry if you hear random neighbors yelling out the window. The first instance was pretty early on in the book in which Phoebe was saying that she was curvy, and I was like, okay, cool, curvy, whatever. And then it just kept getting more and more detailed, and it seems to be like shoved into random parts of the book. I don't know if it would have bothered me any less if it was not there in that way, like if it was more directed, like a whole like background of her being fat. I don't know if that would have bothered me any less. I'm also fat. I just notice these things in books when they start to like overcompensate. Let's try to read 100 pages before the end of the night, Angel. I think that's doable because Jose gets home in about 2.5 hours. Oh, okay, we're gonna try. We're gonna try to finish this tonight, even though that's the exact opposite of what I think I should do. One last check-in for tonight. I got pretty far. I got to page 268 and we got to a point. I feel like my brain is content. Like I almost could finish the book and just pretend the rest doesn't, because we're at a point where people are happy, which means that in this short little time, there's going to be some sort of like falling apart and then coming back together. And I don't think I can stomach that if I like continue reading. Like I would need to continue reading the whole book. I couldn't just get to a certain point. I will be able to finish this tomorrow, and that'll probably be the only thing I finish tomorrow, because I don't think I could really zip through the other one and finish this tomorrow. Rating wise, I know that the next clip will be me finishing the book, but I anticipate giving this a I think I'm gonna give it a 5-star unless something weird happens, but in reality it's like a 4.5 out of 5 because all the fat comments are really pissing me off. I have finished Love in the Time of Serial Killers. I also have hiccups. It always seems so silly not being a child and having hiccups. So this is getting a 5-star. Looking back on it, there's like a really sort of cute grand gesture moment that isn't really for the main character, but it's still a grand gesture moment. And it was like kind of dealing with like Fortnite dances. And now that I'm thinking about that, it's a little awkward, but considering like I don't have to see it, it wasn't as awkward as it maybe could have been. I feel like I related really intensely to the main character. You're seeing some of the pitfalls that she's having with trying to have a relationship with someone and also being like distracted away from her work, and how things can kind of fall apart if you start to lean too heavily into one part of your life instead of the other. There was also a moment at the end which I felt really called out for in my own obsession with books, and maybe some of you will also feel related. Oh my god, that was a loud one. So the main character is talking about why they have their dissertation. It says, when I was a teenager, there was something almost comforting about reading about serial killers. It was like, here, be afraid of this, focus on this. There's uncertainty and open questions, but it'll all get wrapped up in the end. Justice will be served, the victims will be remembered, whatever. It was only when I started reading and rereading some of those books more closely that I started questioning what justice meant, or truth, or even fear. And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I like about horror and reading in general. God, these hiccups are disgusting. There is like an encapsulated finality. Oh my god, I hate that I said that. But there is this like moment in time, which is the book. It has a beginning, middle, and end. There's a plot, there's a story arc, there's meaning to everything. With romance, you get that like happily ever after, or happy for now, that kind of stuff. And with mysteries and thrillers and horror, there isn't always necessarily a happy ending, but there's a resolution. I think that that's a real reason why books are such a interesting escape for me personally. So we read 3 books for this readathon. It's technically like, you can see, it's about 3 o'clock on the final day of the readathon, but I'm gonna stop because I don't think I can happily read a book and finish it. But we have our 3 books in order. Beast You Are, Paul Tremblay stories, 4 to 5 stars. The stories weren't quite cohesive enough for me, and I feel like some of the stories really pulled the majority of the weight, but it was still a great collection. Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca, 4 to 5 stars. Definitely check out trigger warnings before reading this if you're still interested. I do want to point out that I still really enjoyed it. Trigger warnings should be more widespread across all genres, regardless of if you are going into a book expecting horror or not. And then now, Love in the Time of Serial Killers, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars, which was rather unexpected because I heard some really crappy reviews about this. I'm hoping that I'm like talking out my hiccups, but those are 3 books that I read. And yeah, we will get to the other book, the Augustina Bastorica one, eventually. But I think this has been a pretty successful readathon. Oh crap, we need to look at the prompts and see if I actually finished them. I did not read in the dark because I just simply forgot. Read a novella. I still am going to consider this a novella, even though it was over 200 pages. I really don't care. This also had black on the cover. This one also had black on the cover. Read a book set in fall. I don't think any of these were set in fall. This one exclusively takes place over the summer because it's in between semesters for the characters. And then this one, I also don't think we really got a picture of what season it was. One of the stories in this took place over like many years, and so fall was technically in it, but again, I don't think I really covered that one. Read a thriller. I guess this could be considered a thriller. We kind of got there. And I also had a lot of fun like sticky noting stuff, even though this one I mostly read as an ebook and this one I did it as an audiobook. But oh no, this one I did as an audiobook. Who's keeping track? Just me. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching the vlog. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you also participated in some way in Summerween. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.